Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is our new podcast, Cinemacast. We've been going on for about, 8 weeks now. God, time has been flying, hasn't it? If you guys have yet to do so, hit that like, subscribe button down below. We got so much great content to offer you, from live streams of podcasts, game streams, and such. So many more videos coming up. You guys are going to enjoy the content. Don't miss out. Like I said, hit that like and subscribe button down below. Also, if you follow game streams and podcasts, come follow us on twitch.tv/arrow with a name and kick.com/arrow entertainment. We are also on social media. We are on Twitter, or if you want to call it X, that's fine, at Mike CAWAN. Also, guys, if you want to donate at any time to the channel, if you want to donate, show some love and support, our Cash App link is down below in the description section as well. You always feel free to donate it at any time when we go live or whenever. So here we are, middle of the Halloween season, episode 9. Today we are talking about The Nun 2. When it comes to this movie, it's almost difficult to even describe not only how I feel about the movie, but even to recollect the narrative and recollect the plot, the synopsis within the movie. Now, this movie is part of the Conjuring movie series, the Conjuring universe. That's been going on since 2013. Now, if I look back and I can count, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't be 8. There can't be 8. I guess so. So apparently there is 8, maybe 9 films in the Conjuring series. Now, the Conjuring series is basically a series of films all together from Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema. And most of the films, they're all based on true events, true stories. Where you got The Conjuring, which focuses on the Ed and Lorraine Warren's case in 1971, which investigated a witch's curse in a farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Followed by movies such as Annabelle, which is based off the cursed Annabelle doll. But it's not actually the Annabelle doll. It's just a very ugly, glorified movie version of the Annabelle doll, just to make it more terrifying and more creepy. The actual Annabelle doll was a Raggedy Ann doll. This doll, it just upped the ante for horror. Now, was there a cursed object that was an Annabelle doll? Yes, it was. It is still locked up today in the Ed and Lorraine Warren's museum, which is located somewhere up there. I forgot where they live, New York, Rhode Island, wherever it is. Then you got Conjuring 2, which focuses on the Enfield poltergeist over in London, which took place in 1977. Then you had another Annabelle movie after that. It's almost like if you're looking at video game wise, it's almost looking at like the Call of Duty series. Black Ops, Modern Warfare, Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 3, and so forth. Well, here is the first to break that series of its back and forth. The Nun. The Nun came out in 2018. Now, this spin-off film featuring the demon nun character Valak from The Conjuring 2, well, it was introduced in The Conjuring 2. This movie, the film follows a priest and a nun as they investigate an unholy secret and confront a malevolent spirit in the form of a demonic nun. Now, this film, the first one, it didn't fare too well at the box office, I want to say. Well, it probably fared at the box office, but to me, when I watched it, it was something that I just could not get into. I wasn't too much into the first one. Like, I followed the story. The story was trying to be interesting. But for the most part, the movie itself had a severe dark tone to it. And I'm not talking about dark tone as in gothic dark. I mean, it does have a gothic appeal to it because it involves religion. It involves a religion, it involves a priest, a nunnery, all that good stuff. But the film itself, like, I gotta say, and it's a little pet peeve of mine, if I'm watching a movie and it's too dark to see, if every scene, if 95% of the movie is dark, and you need to turn the brightness up on your TV or your screen, that's annoying. And that's almost basically the same with The Nun 2 in some ways. It's like, I want to be able to see the entity. I want to be able to see the demon. I want to be able to see everything. I don't want it to be some kind of mystery where it's like, you hear a noise and you know the person that you're watching is looking into the corner and sees something. I want to be able to see it too. But The Nun fared at 24% on Rotten Tomatoes if you give a rat's ass about ratings. And then we went back to Annabelle Comes Home, the last Annabelle movie in the Annabelle series. And then you got The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This one was to explore lycanthropy, citing an American werewolf in London and the Hounds of Baskervilles as inspiration. And then there was, there was the other one before that around there. The Curse of La Leona. I think that was another movie that was part of the Conjuring series. I can't remember. That was also released by Warner Brothers, but I don't think it was part of the Conjuring series. It doesn't look like it. So then we got The Nun 2. Now, the first Nun ended on a note of a cliffhanger, where the character who plays the actor who plays the character Frenchie, or his name is Maurice. At the end of the first one, if you've seen the first Nun, or if you haven't, go back and rewatch it. But at the end of the first one, in order to fight the demon, the nun, or whoever was fighting the demon, the woman herself, ended up spitting out the blood of Christ onto her, or it was some wine that was blessed as the blood of Christ, and it ended up killing off this demonic entity. But then you come to find out during the end of that film that this guy, Maurice, or Frenchie as they call him, is possessed by Valak. So you know there's going to be a sequel after that. I don't even remember too much of the first one. I remember watching it. I remember certain scenes from it, but I just don't too much remember it. Not unless I go back to it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do remember that now. So at the end of the first one, who becomes one of the main characters in the sequel, ends up possessed at the end of the first one. So then fast forward about 4 or 5 years. Here we got The Nun, Chapter 2. Serving as a sequel to The Nun and the 8th installment to the Conjuring Universe franchise. How do we talk about this movie? And I really don't want to go into talking too much about the synopsis because I'm going to end up losing you guys. I definitely will end up losing you. And it's going to be a bore fest. It definitely is. But you got actresses and actors that return, such as Taissa Farmiga, I guess that's her name, returning as Sister Irene. You got Jonas Bloquet returning as Maurice or Frenchie. So you got a couple actors and actresses that are returning, including Bonnie Aarons, who portrays the nun. Like, when you look at a picture of this woman, like, even though in the poster you see, that's all you see is makeup, the outfit and all. I'm sorry, this woman is ugly in fucking real life. I'm sorry, Bonnie Aarons, 63 years old, she looks like a witch. I'm serious, this woman looks like a witch. Like, if I look at the movies that she was in, okay, she was in, let me see. She was in the Princess Diaries movies. I've never seen them. She was in Shallow Hal. I don't remember seeing her in that. She was in the movie I Know Who Killed Me. I haven't really fully watched that. I'm trying to see if there's any movies that I may have seen her in. but it doesn't look like it. Because some of the other movies, like I've either seen them or heard of them. There's one that looks like Dan Aykroyd in BDSM with Rosie O'Donnell. I don't want to know what the fuck that's about. Okay. So, this woman, I don't know too much about her. All I know, she looks like a goddamn witch. That's all I know. And then you got Jonas Blockett, whatever his fucking name. He was in the movie Orphan. Yeah, he was in the movie Orphan. He was in a few other movies as well. Let's see. Dramas. I think he's got a couple comedies under his belt, but nothing too much. So you got some unknown. Well, to me, they're unknown actors. If I don't know too much about their background and what they portray in other movies, then I don't know too much about them. So yeah, this movie, like I said, it picks up right after the offense of the Nun, the first Nun. So you got a scene at the beginning, which takes place in 1956, where you got Father Noyet and Jacques performing daily chores at the church in France. While they are investigating a disturbance, Noyet is raised into the air, set on fire, and burned to death before a terrifying Jacques flees. So it's like there's this random scene, which it also happens to be part of the plot as you go into it. But, you know, these kind of movies, they're going to be a little violent in a sense. You know, they're paranormal related movies, you're supernatural, but there's going to be some kind of violence. So you got a priest that's lifted in the air, you know, he's being burned alive, and then that's that. You know, there's that. So then following the events, as it says from the first movie, Sister Irene is now serving in a convent in Italy. Maurice works at a boarding school in France, where he is befriended by a young Irish student, who is the new character named Sophie, and her teacher and mother, Kate. Irene has a vision of Maurice asking her to save him. She is dispatched by the Cardinal to investigate a series of deaths across Europe attributed to the demon Valak due to her previous experience with the demon. She then travels to Tarascon with Sister Deborah, a young novice, who expresses her difficulty in accepting miracles, such as the real presence of Christ. Meanwhile, a delivery girl witnesses Valak taking possession, talking to a possessed Maurice before Valak kills her. So already within the first 15-20 minutes, you got quite a bit going on. You got Sister Irene, who reprises her role, who returns from the first one. She's investigating some deaths across Europe. And then she befriends another person who's part of the convent, who she has ye little faith with when it comes to miracles in Christ. But yet she's joining a convent for nuns. Yeah, go figure. All the while, Maurice, you know, he's taken up a job at a boarding school, which is where the movie is going to take place at. And then you, the viewer, see that, okay, this guy, he's possessed by the demon. So wherever he goes, the demon goes with him. So that's how the demon ends up haunting the area, haunting the school and such, and taking over and killing off certain people. Now, a lot goes on in this movie. And there's a lot of, oh shit, what do I call it? A lot of religious imagery, including goats, demonic creatures, and such. The use of the blood of Christ, which is, you know, red wine, of course, which is also used again at the end of the movie to send Valak back to hell, also freeing Maurice of possession and saving his life. And then, of course, at the very end of the movie, the next day, Irene leads Maurice outside and helps him regain his senses. However, she becomes concerned and as she watches him going off with Sophie and Kate inside. So, there's a lot that goes on within this movie. Like I said, I can't explain a whole lot because I've only watched it once. It was at least 3 weeks since I've watched it. But I will say, The Nun 2 is definitely a step up from the first entry. It definitely is. Now, if I look at the critical response, so it's got a better rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 52%, or a 5.1 out of 10. Now, let me read up first on some of these reviews here. The website's consensus from Rotten Tomatoes reads that it's scarier than its predecessor. The Nun 2 makes for an entertaining addition to the Conjuring franchise despite not being the most original horror sequel. So yes, it's not really original. It doesn't really try anything new. There's maybe a couple scenes that are interesting that give it a nice little twist. But other than that, it's basically recycling everything that the first one had already done. So if you're familiar with how the spirit operates in the first movie, if you're familiar with how everything goes when it comes to this and the scares and the darkness and, those dark corners where, you're waiting for something to pop out. So there's not too many jump scares when it comes to movies like this. Like the jump scare, there may be one or two jump scares. That's about it. But when it comes to movies in the Conjuring franchise, it relies more on atmosphere and your sense of knowing something's getting ready to happen or knowing something's around the corner, but you don't quite know it. And you're waiting for it to pop up. You're waiting for something to happen, and then it doesn't happen. And then when you least expect it, boom, it pays off in the end. The big, where you're sitting there and you're waiting. And you're waiting. The build up, it just gets more intense, more and more intense. And then when it feels like a letdown, it's like, boom. It hits you like a sock in the face. So that's how some of these movies are, in a sense. So I know jump scares are usually pretty cheap. Not a lot of people rely on, they go to a movie, they want to be terrified. They don't want to sit there for 2 hours to 2 or 3 jump scares? And then that's it. And then you're watching the rest of the movie. And you're like, God, that sucks. Now, usually when I go and see a horror movie, especially something like this, I go for the story. I go for the atmosphere of the movie. I don't go for jump scares. Jump scares it's a neat little niche. It's just a little niche. It's something that, that ties you over until something terrifying actually happens or whatnot. Now, did I find this movie terrifying in any way? Not really, because I sat here and watched it. I enjoyed the movie for what it was. It's definitely a step up from its predecessor. Even though it is a sequel to it, I doubt there will be a third Nun movie, especially with how this one ends. But something like The Nun 2, it's just something about it where it's hard for me to transcribe for you how the movie is when it comes to the plot. It's hard to transcribe how I actually feel about a movie like this. Maybe it's because it takes place, with religion being the main theme of it. Usually a lot of horror movies, they'll tack on religion as a theme. Like, okay, you got to have a faith in God in order to defeat the demon. Take example, our last episode, The Exorcist Believer. There was religious themes within that movie as well. But I guess certain movies that I have to be focused on, especially something like this, where you're trying to keep track of everything that's going on. Now, probably the most terrifying part, if you're young watching this, is yes, there's a scene or two that involves young children at this convent, at this school, who are under attack, not just by Valak, but by another demon that's controlled by Valak. So, when it comes to horror movies, usually when you put children in peril, that becomes the driving force of a horror movie. That becomes the driving force of terror, being terrified because you're feeling fear. You're fear for these children. You're fearing for the children that are in severe danger. Look at Stephen King's It. Now, the original, it was a TV movie. It was a TV miniseries, but you didn't see a whole lot with that. But when you saw the remake in theaters, That remake was balls to the goddamn wall. And I'm talking, you fucking see kids dying. You see kids severed and chopped up and eaten alive and shit. You know, you definitely do see that. Just how it is in the book. So nowadays, when it comes to horror movies, if there's children in it, children ain't safe. No child is safe. There is a few scenes in this movie where some children do die. They do meet an end. And you do feel for them, but sadly, sorry, a child dies here and a child dies there. That's basically what this movie is. You know, there is no sorry, no, so, you know, no, I'm sorry, you know, please forgive me moments. You know, this, something like this, it's meant to try to terrify you. It tries something, and it's definitely much amped up much more than the predecessor, but it still falls just a little short. Now, Frank Scheck of The Hollywood Reporter wrote, the filmmaker does a fine job creating a subtly ominous atmosphere and orchestrates the violent mayhem, much of it involving terrified little girls with disturbing relish. Then the Times' Ed Poten gave the film 3 of 5 stars, saying it often flirts with ridiculousness, but praised Shave's direction. Who is Shave? I think that's director. Yeah, Michael Shaves. He was director of the movie. Praised his direction, Farmiga and Downey's performances, and the finale. Even CNN, Communist News Network's Brian Lowry, called the film a slick, if familiar, addition to the very fertile Conjuring universe that, by deftly expanding on a 2018 hit, appears destined to become another cinematic habit. So there is a lot of good that's being said about this movie. There's also a lot of bad, too. The Sydney Morning Herald's Jake Wilson gave the movie 2 of 5 stars, writing, the shocks are brief and not too grisly. The dingy gothic look is as you expect, and the mechanical climax steers clear of the more unsettling possibilities that might have emerged if Frenchie's Jekyll and Hyde sides have been meaningfully linked. And then you got Mark Kennedy of the Associated Press gave it a 1 out of 5 stars, writing, a new directing and writing team fails to shock or scare with a color-by-numbers plot and a meandering, languid wannabe fright fest. That's all it is, I could say. On the negative side, it's a wannabe fright fest. It tries to up the scares. It knows. It's like these directors, these writers, these producers, they know that the first one wasn't a good hit. It wasn't a hit. People saw it, but it didn't hit the mark. So they tried something else. They tried to take the plot a little bit further from the first one. They tried adding some new things to it, but it still fell short. And that's what happens with a lot of movies when you add a sequel to it. Sequels are 50-50. They'll either work or they won't. And if they do work, sometimes, you know, depending on how much money they bank off of it, sometimes how good it is, and if the audience wants more, do you want to really chance a third movie? Because looking back in the 80s and 90s, when it came to movies of 3, third movie always was kind of a flop. Now, some people out there do have a special place in their heart for the thirds when it comes to movies of the thirds. Take a look at Halloween 3. Okay, Halloween 3 was supposed to be something different for the franchise. It was supposed to take the franchise and turn it into an anthology series. But it fell short because people were like, you got the first 2 movies about Michael Myers. Where's he at in the third one? Third was about some fucking maniac who wants to restore, you know, the Celtic ways of Halloween and kill kids on Halloween night with these masks. So that fell short. Look at Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. The first 2 Hellraiser movies were terrifying enough. Like, today I'll still watch them. They don't give me nightmares or anything, but they're superb. I wouldn't change anything about the first 2. The third one, however, yes, I have a guilty pleasure of it somewhere in my heart, but it still falls short because it's such a short movie. There's so much that they could have added into the movie. It feels like there's a lot of plot holes within it. You don't see too much of what you want to see and what you hope to see. But you just go with what they give you. So if they did a third movie for The Nun, if they did a third Nun, there is nothing that they can offer on the table at this point. There is nothing that they can offer. The only thing that they offer with this movie, and I read it here in this statement, and I never would have thought of saying that, calling it this, but it's perfect. The character Frenchie, he has that Jekyll and Hyde sense. They add the whole Jekyll and Hyde subplot to the movie, where he's possessed, but it's got that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of persona going on for most of the movie until you figure out, hey, he is, well, you already know, you as the viewer already knows, but the characters in the movie, they don't. So it's a Jekyll and Hyde experience for them until they learn, hey, he's possessed by this demon, the demon's back. We got to figure out how to kill the demon off and save him. That's pretty much what the movie is. So The Nun 2, looking at it and watching it for the first time, if you've seen the first one, if you were a fan of the first one, you'll definitely want to check out this one. Because this one, it has a little bit more to offer to it. However, it still kind of falls short in the end if you were expecting a lot more than what it dishes out. Now, hopefully they won't do a third one. Hopefully this is the last of it, because this is just a side story in the Conjuring series. Now, is this movie based on anything? Is it based on anything? No. This movie is not based on some demon named Volok. Actually, looking at Volok, okay. So, going a little into the history of Volok. So, Volok is a demon described in the Goetic Grimoires, the Lesser Key of Solomon, or in the Thomas Rudd's variant of Valu. I'm not going to try to pronounce the other names at all, but is pretty much depicted as a angelically winged boy riding a two-headed dragon, attributed with the power of finding treasures. And there's different variations of it, but this is a story. That's all it is. It's a Goetic demon from a book of, Volok, Book of Angels, Volume 8. And then you got, in popular culture, the name was used as the first vampire in the movie Vampires in 1998, which starred James Woods. Volok appears in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic book series issue number 7. Ulok appears in the Hellboy story, Box Full of Evil, as a main antagonist. And then you got the 2016 horror movie Conjuring 2 has Volok as the main antagonist, taking the form of the demonic nun and the crooked man from the rhyme There Was a Crooked Man. And then, of course, Volok appeared fourth boss in the game Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Volok also appeared in the first season of Shadowhunters, and then the 2017 manga Welcome to Demon School, and then you now got the 2023 movie The Nun 2. So this story is not based on anything in real life. There's nothing going on with some demonic entity in some church over in the UK or over here. There's nothing dealing with that. It's a fake story. It's just a story added to this Conjuring universe to spice it up a little bit. That's all it is. But the movie, however, if you want to check it out, if you feel like this movie is definitely something you want to see, make sure you see the first movie before checking out the second movie. The Nun 2, I would give this movie a 7 out of 10. I give it a 7 out of 10, just to be a little bit fair. I was going to go for an 8, but I will give it a 7 out of 10, unless I go back and rewatch it. That's it for The Nun 2. And I know today's episode of CinemaCast, guys, was a little short. Like I said, I didn't have too much to say about this movie because there's really not much to say. And I don't want to end up reading the whole synopsis to you because you'll get lost by it, you know? So definitely check it out. It is out on demand right now. It should be also on Blu-ray, DVD, and such if you want to find it, buy it, and check it out. So guys, thank you for tuning in today to episode 9 of The Nun 2. And as we approach Halloween, be sure to check out our next episode, which will probably be talking about the Halloween movies and the such. But until then, guys, like I said, like and subscribe down below for more great content. If you guys are into our gaming streams and our podcast, follow us on twitch.tv/arrowwithaname and kick.com/arrowentertainment. Follow us on social media as well for updates on future plans for streams and videos and such. Also, if you're on Discord and you want to join a Discord server, link for that is down below in the description section as well. Guys, thank you for joining me today for today's feature of Cinemacast of The Nun 2. And until next time, guys, we will hopefully see you right here for next week's feature, right here at the cinema.